Hey everyone, I'm Chris Gordon on Hellblazer Beers. Welcome, and I'm here with Courtney Kocak, who's a writer, producer, comedian, and producer as well, and hosts of Private Parts Unknown, which is a sex-positive travel-style podcast which explores relationships and culture. And you've also got a debut memoir of Girl Gone Wild, which explores ambition, sexuality, misogyny, and your own experiences, including working on a Girls Gone Wild tour. And it's been quite a long time in development, obviously from early essays to finally getting your publication as well. So welcome, Courtney. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Excellent. Great. I'm excited to have you here as well. You'll have to bear with me because it's been a while since I've done my last one. so my nerves are getting to me a little bit. So I'll crack on. Okay. So you've worn so many hats. I mean, as I've just mentioned, like writer, podcaster, producer. What feels most you today?
Oh man, I think what feels most me is chasing all of them. I mean, I've never been someone who can easily put myself into a box. I think my career would be easier if I could. But yeah, I really love being able to do all of them, and I found that it all feeds into each other. Like, having a podcast has made promoting Girl Gone Wild so much easier. It made me able to produce the audiobook and narrate it myself. And so, yeah, I cannot pick a lane.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. I guess it all does roll into one as well. So when you got the podcasting, because you're used
Yeah.
to that public speaking, and you can, and who knows their own book better than someone who can do this audio for their own book than someone who's written it.
I have to say, obviously, the book is my whole story. So,
Hmm.
when you're interviewing people for your show, as you're doing a lot of storytelling through the questions that you ask and who you're choosing to platform and all of those things. And with a memoir, I'm really like putting my whole like heart and soul and story out there. So that does probably make it the most me.
That's fantastic. Yeah, you're right. Because when you do this kind of thing for a job or whatever, you are putting yourself in someone else's shoes the whole time. So yeah,
Yeah.
I imagine it's quite daunting as well for you to actually have it finally published, your own story.
It there's complicated emotions for sure.
So what originally pulled you towards the storytelling?
So I was an actor
Hmm.
first. That was my big dream. I grew up in a small town and I just always wanted to be an actor, and I chased that dream as hard as I could. Ultimately, I went to college to do a BFA in acting, and then I did some independent films, and then I went out to LA. And then I became sort of disillusioned with acting at about 27. I realized I hated auditioning. I hated
Hmm.
being the last person brought on a project. I think from the outside, it seems like acting's the most exciting part of the entertainment industry, but then you realize they don't have a lot of control over the projects that they do and what they represent and all of that. And so I started writing as a way to create opportunities for myself
Uh-huh.
as an actor, and then I realized like, "Oh, I love doing the world building. I love doing the storytelling. So I was screenwriting, and then I started writing essays, and then I realized like, "Shit, I have to pivot."
That's fantastic. I mean, and I think a lot of people, some people still, don't understand the life of an actor. I mean, that's what I've done is interview actors. So I love hearing those stories because there's so
Yeah,
much people don't know. And like you say, the auditions, and they're just non-stop because
yeah,
for every, 30, 40 auditions, you might get one role out of it. So
yeah,
I can understand how it can just be like tiresome and despondent. You get so despondent from it as well.
yeah.
So it's good to actually get into that, move into that storytelling from there, and it builds you up there. So interesting. Private Parts Unknown itself obviously has got such a distinctive voice. So how did you get that concept? How did that come together?
Well, it's been an evolution. My first podcast was a comedy podcast that I did in 2013 with my
Uh-huh.
writing partner at the time, and then in 2016, I was a frustrated dater. I was, on Tinder and trying to find love, and, my best friend at the time was also going through a similar kind of thing, and so we started a podcast called Reality Bites,
Right.
and that is actually the, like, precursor to Private Parts Unknown. It was on the same feed. And then I did a season with her. I did a season with rotating co-hosts. I did a season with a different co-host. And anyway, I went through about 4 seasons of Reality Bites. And then I realized, instead of it just being so focused on dating and entirely US based, like, I wanna broaden the aperture a little bit, and I wanna cover more international things, and I wanna broaden the topics and, really as a way for me to stay engaged because I was growing. I'd started dating my now husband at the time, and so I was kind of over the frustrated dater phase and like, I was interested in these other topics that were sort of still related, but a little a little further out, in up into including reproductive rights and things like Giselle Pellico, and we also did, when it turned into Private Parts Unknown, a trip to Helsinki, a trip to Mexico City, a trip to Tokyo, and all of those were incredible opportunities to really see how other people live and love, and we could do our kind of Anthony Bourdain thing with it, and so, yeah, unfortunately, after COVID, there was only 1 trip. After that, a Belize series that I'm actually gonna be releasing shortly. I love that, I have more leeway in terms of topics, and I'm actually gonna do a rebrand on the 10-year anniversary in September, and I'm gonna broaden the topics even more. So I'm
Oh,
excited
fantastic.
about the change, and just I think, if you podcast for a long time, it's good to allow your show to evolve with you.
Yeah, that's really good. It's really interesting to hear how you're coming along and what you've done to sort of, so you've reinvented after that, after your first to four
Yeah,
seasons and then moving on. Uh, I understand that from my point of view as well. I've been doing this like 15 years, so I know exactly where you're coming from.
yeah,
I just haven't got the ideas to evolve to. I mean, yeah, that is really interesting. I started out doing impressions. That's all mine started as. We were saving the shape,
interesting.
the Constantine TV show. That was all. That's why the Hellblazer came into it. So we're just doing that, and it was people were despondent because it was cancelled, and so I just trying to cheer people. Not a comedy show, but it was cheering people up. So I come on and I was like, do Yoda for 5 or 10 minutes or stuff like that, and trying to get
That's so
people
funny.
laughing. So yeah, but yeah, it's really. I think podcasting is a great way to evolve, and you evolve as a person. You can actually evolve what your show, your dynamics, and how you actually do things as well.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. What's one conversation or episode that's changed your perspective personally?
Oh my god, there's so many, it's so hard to pick. I just did an episode about forgiveness,
Mhm.
and the guest, Dr. Drayvon James, was the guest, and she framed forgiveness as an act of self-love. It's not for the other person, it's actually for you, so that you don't carry around those toxic feelings, and I loved that reframe, but, I mean, that's just, like, one of the latest episodes. I learned something from every one of my guests, and that's one of the best parts of podcasting is you get to build those relationships and you get to
Uh-huh.
learn things from other people. Yeah.
I definitely agree with that. That's actually a really interesting perspective how to look at forgiveness as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because yeah, you suppose you are. You kind of as you're letting go. It's your final act of letting go, isn't it? Really, and just like moving on from that toxic.
Yeah, and, like, resentment, I think we
Mm.
all can feel that in our body, and when you actually let it go, that's why it feels like you're letting a weight off your shoulders.
Well, yeah, yeah, exactly. No, I like that. That is good. How's podcasting, obviously, because you're the author as well. So, how would you say it's shaped? We're talking about shaping your identity as you moved along. So, how's it shaped your identity compared to writing?
Well, it's allowed me to explore a lot of the topics that I'm interested in and get other people's perspectives. And it's also
Hmm.
just given me a place to start talking about some things. So, like, I had a lot of shame around my abortion that I had when I was 23 for a long time, and I didn't tell a soul for over 2 years. And then I realized maybe in like 2018 that I wasn't talking about it publicly,
Hmm.
even though I had this podcast about sex and love and dating, like, I never said that's happened to me, and so through podcasting, I've been able to do a bunch of series about reproductive rights, and I've had some amazing conversations, and I feel like I can sort of give back to my younger self a little bit and, like, kind of normalize the conversation that was so shameful for me, and so, yeah, I think it's really powerful in that way.
I'll start by saying you shouldn't feel ashamed at that at all. I don't know which obviously you've come through, but I know in your country at the moment, I'm not going to go into politics, but I know in your country it's a very hot topic.
Yeah.
And to be honest, sitting over in the UK, we're frankly quite disgusted attitudes. It's really shocking. So yeah,
Yeah.
really can see where how valuable what you do to help women.
Yeah, that's why we have
What
to talk
also,
about it, I
yeah,
feel like.
exactly. It's not a taboo subject. It's not. Women shouldn't feel marginalised and trodden on, basically, by, like you say, that misogyny which we mentioned before. But that is great. And yeah, the fact that you've found that in yourself to be able to use this medium to actually express that, come to terms, and come to heal yourself. And I say your
Mhm.
younger self, as well as reach out to everybody out there now and all the women who might be going through very similar, especially with worries that they've got going on from the
Yeah.
pressures from the society over in America and stuff. So moving on to the book as well. Story. We're looking at the stories and themes of your girl gone wild. First of all, I'm going to go into why the title. What does it mean to you beyond the obvious reference of?
Well, so really what I unpack is, I sold t-shirts on the Girls Gone Wild tour when I was
Mhm.
21. It's the title essay of the collection, and I think the whole book is an unwitting feminist coming of age, and so I went through a lot of experiences, especially in my early 20s, that sort of showed me what society thinks about women and showed me misogyny, showed me the patriarchy. So for me, Girl Gone Wild is sort of a reclamation and takes, the girls that were coerced into doing things that they didn't want to do on the Girls Gone Wild tour were not girls gone wild. They were girls done wrong. And to really be a girl gone wild is involves agency and control over your destiny and rewriting some of those negative scripts around, uh, the patriarchal kind of rules that we have in our society, and that's powerful, you know?
Mhm.
In fact, the patriarchy doesn't want you to do that, and so
Exactly.
that's really, like, a big, takeaway of from the book.
No, that's really good. It touches on, I say, many, many themes there, like you say, which is still, you'd think in 2026 that we'd have actually moved on, but no, we haven't.
No, you're
And it's
right, we have
when
not.
girls are sexually assaulted and stuff like that, and then they're the ones made to be a victim because they're wearing a skirt or something. They say, "Well, you must have been asking for it." That's what they say, really. He must have been asking for it wearing a skirt. Why not? What about the guy with walking with his shirt off? Is he asking for it? He's got no
Yeah,
shirt. It's no. It really gets to me as well, to be fair. It's the society needs to change a lot. It's started to, but there's too many
yeah.
deep
Well,
rooted,
this
like you
is
say,
my
misogynistic old
contribution to
yeah,
sort of undoing some of that.
exactly. I had a quickly flipping back to a previous guest who did the same. She was a lovely lady, Alexandra Yeni, and she'd made a short film about menstruation
Great.
and obviously, trying to push the taboos about that and obviously the difficulties that some people can have with it.
Uh-huh.
And it was uncomfortable for me to talk about, in fairness, from a guy, but I actually really enjoyed it. It was one of my favourite interviews because it took me right out of my comfort zone and that way of thinking, of
Yeah,
being brought up thinking, you can't discuss it,
yeah,
to like break the taboos and stuff. So it was, yeah, I'm all for that. It was really, break the taboos of all. Why should it be taboo to talk about these things and let women
totally.
express how they, what it does feel like, and rather than have them all just sitting there like with the zip over their mouth, we can't discuss it. That's great. So obviously the book itself is described as a mix of emotion, delusion, sex, and misogyny. So what made you want to tell it now? And obviously we've just touched on it all there. So why did you want to tell this story now?
Well, it's been, a dream since I made that pivot to writing when I was 27.
Hmm.
I had this little idea in my head like, "Oh, someday I would love to write a memoir," but I didn't really know how to get started. I was inspired by Cheryl Strayed, is the author of Wild, and she wrote Tiny Beautiful Things, and had this I was like, "Ah, I would love to be like Cheryl, like my own version of Cheryl someday." And so I really just started writing essays and you know, working towards the goal, but unsure of how to exactly do it. And then in 2020, I really started working on the book in earnest. I took a year-long incubator with one of my favorite writers, Chloe Caldwell, and then I could really get started. The story kind of came bubbling out of me, like I'd been waiting to tell this story for a long time. The Girls Gone Wild piece quickly appeared. A lot of the story of, trying to make it in Hollywood quickly emerged. And so by the end of that year, I had a really solid draft, and it wasn't I could feel like it wasn't done. But I didn't really know what to do, and so I sort of sat on it for a little bit, and then in 2023, I did another year-long incubator because I was frustrated with myself of like, "Why am I not getting this done?" And I really knew how to I really took that one seriously, and so by the end of 2023, I had a version that looks similar to what it is today. I did a lot of revision after that, but yeah, it's been a long process, but I feel like it's the story that I've been wanting to tell even subconsciously for a really long time.
Fantastic. I guess, yeah, you want to make sure that's obviously it takes a long time because you want to get it right and you want to, yeah, like I say, when you're going back and revising it, you want to make sure that really is your story and that
Yeah.
people really understand everything. You don't want to bypass anything or
Yeah, and some memoirs are about a tiny slice of your life, and this one really is, 0 to 40 for me, and it also is my first memoir, so, like, I'm working on another one now. I don't think it's gonna take nearly as long,
huh?
but I am glad that I took my time with this first one and really tried to get it right because it's something that I can be really proud of.
Definitely, definitely should be proud that you've been able to get it out there, and obviously you had your memoirs published. I started drafting one for myself about 10 years ago, and I called it "Memoirs of a Fat Lad." It's one I've put down, and I've not touched it again for many years, for about 5 6 years. But yeah, it's
You can
you
always
kind
pick
of
it back up.
inspiring me to kind of pick it
Yeah,
up again and change it. I just think no one wants to listen to me being dull.
don't say that.
Obviously with the part of it of the year's process and the experience with the Girls Gone Wild tour as well. So what did you ultimately fully conclude about that time?
About the tour itself?
About the tour itself, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it touched on it a little bit, but I my idea of which I don't know, did you guys see the infomercials in the UK?
About no, we didn't actually. No, we didn't get to see him.
So, you know, when I was growing up, if you watched late night TV,
Mhm.
you could not miss these infomercials for Girls Gone Wild, and it was like, censored topless girls, but they were on a beach and it looked like a party and it looked like a really fun time and there was lighthearted steel drum music and it seemed kind of innocent, but really they
Mhm.
were selling porn, but that was not totally obvious. I guess it was in a way, but it was also sort of like hidden and just with the vibe of it. And so when I took the job, I thought it was gonna be the party that I saw in the infomercials. I
Right,
didn't realize I was gonna be part of making the porn.
right.
And my job was really, my official job was merch girl to sell T-shirts, but my, you know, hidden job was to make the other girls feel comfortable enough to be exploited. And so I didn't understand that there was gonna be so much exploitation. The girls were gonna be drunk, expected to sign contracts. They were gonna
Mhm.
be coerced into doing things that they didn't wanna do. Not to say that happened to everyone, but it happened to enough people that it was problematic. And yeah, I guess I just didn't know what I was getting into because the brand was such this powerful force, and even politicians like John Kerry were making jokes about it, and so there was something that seemed kind of innocuous about it, and that's not accurate. And like today, we understand what the company represents today, but we didn't know at that time.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Well, yeah, you can go into something quite innocently and thinking it's that, but I think that's something that's coming out a lot, obviously, with the Epstein
Yeah.
stuff about how much women and girls are being just traumatized and abused and exploited as
Yeah.
part of a system. Make big promises of this, and then is that they're being pulled into something that they've got like yourself, like you did. You had no idea that was you were going to be part of a part of that itself. That's must be horrifying. Really, obviously, it must be daunting and horrifying. So yeah, I say again, I give you so much kudos and credit for being able to come out and speak about this and give your experiences, which will warn a warning and a lesson for others, just to sort of take care, because there there just seems to be a hierarchy of men who do that, and and it's yeah, I can't
Yeah,
say it into words. You know
it's
exactly what I mean.
ubiquitous. Yeah.
It is. It's just and it doesn't stop either, does it? No matter how hard people try, but I think it's coming more to light, and I think that's a good thing. It's the more, like you say, more like you talk about it, the more your book comes out and things like that, and people can be open and start talking.
Yeah, the Epstein files are, it makes Girls Gone Wild seem like kid stuff. Like it's,
Yeah,
you know, but I think they're part of the same toxic, you know, culture. And so if we can, I think, address the Epstein files in the way that it deserves to be addressed, it will have a trickle down effect in the same way that it's had a trickle down effect on, all these other things like Girls Gone Wild happening.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So, with the book itself, so we've touched on quite a lot of that side of things. But what was the hardest part of it to write, and the hardest part to revisit? And I've got a feeling we've probably touched on some of that because it sounds quite.
Actually it was really cathartic to do a lot of the writing initially, like the generative writing. Obviously, like I cried, during the more emotional parts. Um, but really the revision process was hard. It was pretty self-directed. And so it was really just me trying to live up to my own high standards. And it was also a point, when you're in the generative phase, you're not thinking about the book through other people's eyes. You're really just writing for yourself. But when you
Mhm.
move into revision, especially when you have a book deal, which I did in the later stages of revision, you're thinking about what are the people that I'm writing about going to think about this? What are the, you know, what are the writers that I admire gonna think about this? Like, you're hearing all these other voices in your head as you're revising, and, I think it's a valuable part of the process. I'm really glad I put a lot of time and effort into it, but it's different. It's not as fun for me as the generative phase, so that was definitely where I was, like, very emotional, very much hearing lots of voices in my head. So, yeah, that was tough.
Can imagine. I can imagine. And with all the topics that you cover, with obviously sex, identity, substance use, and things, was there anything that you'd almost left out? Obviously, even in the revision, when you did through the revision stage, even that you're thinking, I'm just going to leave that out.
Not really because I didn't wanna say it or admit to it or I thought it was too much. I
Uh-huh.
did trim a couple things that were about other people that I just thought were, like, sort of gratuitous or not my story to tell.
Uh-huh.
Even though I thought it was, like, a funny detail or whatever, I just really that was part of the revision process is just protecting the people that I love, and even the people that I don't love don't deserve me to talk out of turn about their story, and so, um, yeah, I did a little bit of censoring for other people, but I didn't do any of that for myself.
Okay. Thank you. Nice answer. That's a good answer. And what do you hope readers feel when they finish the book? We mentioned about readers, how you, but when you were doing the revision, how you want them to feel. So how do you think they'd feel when they finish the book?
Well, I got so much out of the actual writing process, like, it changed me as a person. I sort of could take experiences that I'd felt a lot of shame about before and kind of unpack that, and a lot of it dissipated in the process, and so it was really, like, an experience of liberation for me, and so that's what I hope readers get from it is, you know, being able to unpack some of their own shame and being able to forgive their former selves for doing things that, their current self wouldn't do, and, that can be a really powerful lesson, so I hope to pass that on to others.
Excellent, excellent. Some really great advice again there, Courtney. Thanks. And obviously, with the work as well, obviously sits at the intersection of sex, media, and culture, which you've obviously explained quite a few times, talked about. What conversations do you think, and again, we touched on this, but what conversations do you think we're still not having openly enough? And I think we've touched on this a few times already, but
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just how deeply embedded some of this misogyny is with, you know it's great when, like, Giselle Pellico goes public with her story of her husband facilitating her rape, dozens of times over, but, like, we need to have a bigger conversation around that in terms of, like, that's not what every victim looks like. Most victims never get justice for sexual assault and things like that, and so, yeah, we need to be able to talk about how to make that right and, like, how to stop those dynamics from happening at the beginning, and, reproductive rights, I mean, we sort of talked about this, but, with rights being threatened in the States, it's the conversation needs to keep happening until those rights are able to be restored, and so, yeah, I think I try to have those conversations, but I don't know if culturally we're having them enough.
yeah, no, I agree on that one as well. And I think is it right? Because we get, I don't know, that in America at the moment, a woman can get shoved in prison or even, I guess, sentenced to death if they go
Depending
out of
on what
state, have
state.
an abortion,
Yeah.
depends which state they're in.
Yeah, yeah, but some of the state laws are very draconian, and some of them are trying to make them even more restrictive, and it's insane because also, we think of abortion as, you know, terminating the pregnancy intentionally, but there's also miscarriages, and
Mhm.
there's people that that want to keep their baby, but they have health risks that come up
Yeah,
during the pregnancy, and that is the same process. To help them, they need an abortion, and
yeah,
it's the same, and so it's also affecting women that are trying to have a baby or have no desire to terminate their pregnancy, but they have to because of
the
their own health is
complications.
at risk. Yeah, so I don't think that nuance is completely understood.
No, there's lots, like you say, lots of nuances, lots of different reasons why someone
Mhm.
might have to have that, and just to, like you say, blanket draconian laws which are put in I mean, I did see, I don't know who it was, I won't name and shame them, no, but I can't remember which one. Some politician is pushing for women to have their votes removed as well in America.
God.
He wants women. That's how bad he said we shouldn't have women. Shouldn't, because they're basically, he just says they're his words. I can't remember his words, but I suppose there's something like pretty much they're just vesticles or vestibles for carrying children. That's all they should be there for. And he's a
Well, that's
politician in
horrible.
America, and it's like, really, you're someone in power, and this is a kind of attitude, and you just, I mean, I know which party he was in. I think that's obvious, a bit. No, it's but you just listen to it, and I was aghast.
Yeah.
I was just looking at it, and I was just wanted to throw my phone. To be honest, 'cause it's just shocking that that kind of conversation is happening today.
Well, Republicans are pushing the SAVE Act right now, which is, not everybody is as extreme as that comment, which
Mm.
I'm happy I missed because
I'll find
that's
out who it is. I'll send it after you.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, they are trying to make it really hard for women to vote who don't have a passport or who changed
Yeah.
their names when they got married, which is so dumb because also I think it's going to affect more Republican women than like I didn't change my name. So anyway, yeah, there's a lot of messed up shit that's happening here right now.
It is, and I really feel for you. I've got quite a few friends out in America as well, and it's just I listen to the stories, and you don't even have to listen to stories. Just look at the news
Yeah.
from our side, and people come across here and they don't realise when they see the news, it's completely different to what's been put out across there. It's just, yeah. It will change people like you, that's what we need, more people like you. And there are a lot of people like you out there just to push back and fight against that system. What would you say to someone who feels like then they're too much or not enough in their own identity? Because that's obviously something you really.
I think, you gotta embrace who you are. I love this Harris Whittles was a comedy writer, um, who wrote on Parks and Rec and other shows, and he was very funny, and then he passed away from a heroin overdose in his early 30s, but he has this tweet that I think about all the time, and the tweet was, "Do you ever think somebody hates you and then they like something of yours on Instagram and then you realize in 100 years we'll all be dead?" And I think about that all the time because it's like, we have this one precious life that we are living right now, and, like, don't get too caught up in what other people think about you, and don't, try to talk yourself out of doing something because you feel like it doesn't follow what other people expect of you. Like, you have 100 years if you're lucky. You probably have less than that. And so, like, take advantage of all the time and, like, live your as long as you're not hurting anybody else, like, live your best life and, like, make yourself happy. And I think everything else will fall into place. And, the haters that think you're too much or not enough, you know, they'll be your haters regardless of what you do. So you don't worry about trying to please them.
That's actually really good advice. I'll take that myself because that's some that's advice for me as well. Because I'm just like that. I'll think that I'm always trying to. I'll always try and please other people, and it's like and then I find that life and time has just passed by so quickly, and you're like,
Yeah.
I've just spent all that time worrying and wasting on why,
Yeah.
it's ridiculous. So, a bit of advice for podcasters then, like myself. So, what
Yeah.
separates from you as a successful podcaster? What separates a good show from one that truly connects?
Well, I'm still trying to be a successful podcaster too, but I think right now Substack is a great place to set up shop. It's really good to have an email list along with your podcast. And so the beauty of a podcast is like you're in somebody's ear for 30 minutes to an hour depending on your show, and so you have a very intimate relationship with them, but you're dependent on them to go back to your feed to stay in touch with you. So if you have a live show or you have something else you want to promote, you don't have a way to do that unless they
Hmm.
come back to your feed. And so having an email list alongside your podcast, which you can do on Substack, you can host your podcast on Substack for free. I only do that for one of my shows because, like, for Private Parts Unknown, I have ad sales through another network. But if I were just starting a podcast today, which I was a couple years ago with Podcast Bestie, I just started it on Substack because why not? I figured I'll just move when I have a reason to move.
Hmm.
And also on Substack, you can do things like Substack Live, which I've been experimenting with. And so what I do sometimes, I don't do this for every episode, but like you can connect the Substack Live to your YouTube channel. And so instead of I'm totally down to edit the audio podcast, and I'm kind of a control freak about that, but, like, I do not have time to do the video as well. And so the beauty of that is sometimes I'll just record the audio like we would like we're recording now. I would start that with the person, and then I move over to Substack Live with them, and we do a
Right.
live,
Yeah.
and then we go back and close out the audio, and then
Okay.
I use the Substack Live video with the well-edited audio version of the podcast, and it does the auto clips like we were talking about that are
Yeah.
amazing, and it's just a new workflow that I'm experimenting with to make video easier because obviously YouTube is an incredible discovery platform. I have not cracked this yet. This is an experiment that I'm running, but, in light of kind of recent trends, I'm feeling bullish on the email list, on the YouTube aspects, but the problem is you don't wanna create a ton of extra work for yourself, so that's why I think the Substack Lives can be so helpful, and then, I don't think not everybody has to have like a million downloads. I think if you're having valuable conversations with people,
Hmm.
and one of the beautiful things is not only you're building an audience, but you're also building the connection. Like, we're getting to have this conversation. I know you 40 minutes better now,
Yeah,
than I did before. And so those relationships that you can build as a podcaster are so valuable. And so that's who former guests. That's who I asked to blurb my book. That's who I'm doing book events with. And so just thinking about how you can use your podcast to build your network can be a great way to leverage podcasting regardless of the size of your show.
excellent. That's really, really helpful and a really interesting answer as well there, Courtney. I'll have to check out Substack. I say I've been using Riverside, and that's great because after this is a
Yeah.
video, and they've introduced some. I'll sing their praise from it because we do this video, and then afterwards, within about 20 minutes maximum, it would have they'd have AI would have completely redone the whole interview, taken out all the pauses, all the ums, the
Really?
ahs, and it gives a magic, and then you get all the little magic clips. But it completely it gives
And
you the
it's
full
good.
episode.
It's a
It is.
good edit.
It's good quality. It's good edit. It comes out. I think there's only once where I've had to change it slightly.
I'm going to experiment. I've been doing a lot of interviews for the
Uh
book,
huh.
and a lot of people are using Riverside these days, and I am going to experiment with Riverside as well. But I just feel like Substack lives are sort of, people expect different quality from it, and so it's fine
Yeah.
if you just release that video, but I'm gonna definitely have to check
Yeah.
out
You can integrate
Riverside.
YouTube Live on this as well and do stuff as well. So it
Oh,
does. It does
wow.
all. Yeah. You can go live on YouTube and a couple of other channels as well. I've not tried it yet. Actually,
Uh-huh.
no, I did. I did it with the Cobra Kai cast once, and I did a live through them, and it went live on the
Cool.
YouTube channel. It was pretty decent. But that's the tools and technology is fantastic out there now.
Yeah.
Yes, it is really good. So thank you. I'm going to do some quick fire questions before we close. I'm going to say quick fire, but the answers might be interesting
Okay.
to hear. One word to describe your younger self during the Girl Gone Wild era.
Ambitious.
Okay. A book that changed your life.
Tiny Beautiful Things by Cheryl Strayed.
Excellent. Most unexpected lesson from podcasting.
Oh my god, there's so many. How can I just pick
That's a
one?
difficult one, isn't it? Yeah. So much you learn.
I think it was a surprise to me that podcasting would just be a huge part of my life. It sort of happened by accident, and so I think the most surprising lesson is just, like, what a powerful medium it can be.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Thank you. A misconception people have about you.
Oh my god. I try not to pay attention. I try not to pay attention to other people's misconceptions. I think, depending on how they know me from, if they know me from stand up, they probably don't understand, the softer parts of me. If they know
Okay.
me from, depending on how they know me, because I do so many things, they might have misconceptions about who I am as a whole person, but that's okay. They can think whatever they want.
And what's next for you?
Well, I'm really excited to keep talking about Girl Gone Wild for the next year and a half or however long, maybe the rest of my life. I'm going to be I'm so excited to return to the page, and
Hmm.
I've got about half of my second memoir done, and so in the summer and in the fall, I'm gonna be really working on that, and I'm really excited about that process. And, yeah, I'm gonna be trying to sell the TV show related to Girl Gone Wild. I'm gonna be rebranding my podcast. I've got a lot of things in the pipeline, so, yeah, just keeping busy with all my creative stuff.
That's fantastic. And my signature question, which is completely random, by the way. And the reason I chose this is again go back to the Muppets thing. I had Mike Quinn. He was a Muppet. He was a puppeteer for Jim Henson
Huh?
and stuff, and he played Nane Num in Star Wars. He was on my show once, and a question was asked by a guest. I used to reach out to people and send the questions in, and I asked it of him, and I thought this is such a cool question. It's a personality question. I've kept it. I asked pretty much everybody. So if you could have a Muppet created after you, what Muppet would it be and why? It could be a mix of any. It could be a new one. It could be an existing one. It's a hard
After
question.
it is a d well, I don't know the Muppets as well as you do, so I'm really curious what Muppet you would assign to me.
Oh God, don't ask me that. So this is a problem. A lot of people are too young to remember the Muppets properly.
Yeah.
I have on. I'm like, I'm stuck here. So, I don't know.
I don't know if it was I liked the drummer.
Animal.
Animal. So maybe I'd be
Actually,
an
yeah, that's
animal.
probably right. Yeah, a free spirit, and quite
Yeah.
from what I've gathered from you, yeah, a free spirit and very lively. Animal's a good one. I did my Kermit once. It was like, Pete, Pete, you need to all sit." Excellent. Is there anything like you'd like to say? Obviously, before I wrap this up now for everyone, is there anything you'd like to say to people who would be watching or listening to this?
I encourage you to check out Girl Gone Wild. I'm really proud of this book, and I have had a really great time chatting with you.
Thank you. I've had a great time chatting with you.